What's up, Audiophiles? It's Gary at Audiophile Zone. I'm here today with Jim Kaplan, Record Collector News. He's got a new hat, apparently.
Yes.
And, of course, Tom Schnabel, renowned musical expert. So, what's up, guys?
We're here to talk about Wayne Shorter.
Yeah, the late, fantastic saxophonist Wayne Shorter. He had a tremendously long career. When did he start playing, Tom?
Probably around his first record was 1959.
Wow.
Chicago label VJ.
Wow. What an incredible career. But all right, so let's get a little background on Wayne. All right. So he came in with Art Blakey and Jazz Messengers. What do you know about this, Tom?
Well, Art Blakey really ran a school and a training ground for young musicians. It was like a school.
Right.
And he demanded a lot from people. He didn't pay a lot, from what I hear, but people cut their teeth, so to speak, in the Jazz Messengers because they were surrounded by the best players in the business, and that would demand the best players. You know, everybody that was anybody went through the Jazz Messengers.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It was amazing how many people went through that group.
Yeah.
So then he joined in the 60s that Miles Davis famous Second Great Quintet, which that was a fantastic group. It's actually my favorite Miles Davis group.
For people who know that there's more to Miles Davis than Kind of Blue, and that's a lot of people. They think that was it. The quintet was an extraordinary group. Everybody was extraordinary. Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, everybody was extraordinary. Tony.
I compare that group favorably to the Kind of Blue group, honestly.
To me, I think the music is a little more interesting, what they were doing.
I agree.
It was.
What about you, Jim? What do you think?
I think it's kind of a continuum, you know. Yeah, I agree. It's a little more interesting.
Yeah, it could be as an audiophile. I'm so sick of Kind of Blue. I own like 20 copies of different versions, DSD, tape transfers. Oh my God. And every year they try to sell you another one.
I think between that and Take 5, it's like there's a lot more to jazz music than those two albums.
Right.
I can't listen to Take 5 one more time. I don't know about you, Jim. What do you think?
You know, I don't have a problem. I don't listen to it very often, but if it comes up, I don't hate any of that. I'll still listen to 1959 was a special year, and those all came out at the same time.
You know, I have a little bit different perspective as a dealer because every freaking guy that comes in and wants to audition the system wants to play Take 5. I swear I might flip out one day and just go crazy on them. I don't know.
If I had ever worked retail, I might have a different view of it, but
yeah,
I'll still listen to Fleetwood Mac once in a while.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then he went on the Weather Report. What do you know about this group, Tom?
Well, it was fronted by two incredible heavyweights, especially Joe Zawinul. Joe Zawinul was a classically trained guy from Vienna. He was a classical pianist. He trained, and then he just went out and started playing with Cannonball Adderley and other groups. He has a great story. I did a lot of interviews with Joe Zawinul in the USO after World War II. He's with a bunch of other Viennese musicians, and they play Honeysuckle Rose by Art Tatum. And Joe had never heard anything like that. And he said, "What is that?" He said, "Oh, this it's called jazz." And then he thought, "Wait, Jake, those are my initials." So, and at that point, he started playing. He had all the technique in the world. He started playing, and then eventually he took the boat to New York City. He was hoping to meet Lena Horne because he had watched Stormy Weather like 20 times, and he wanted to meet her and propose to her. She was already married. He didn't know that. Instead, he got to New York, was there for 3 weeks at Berkeley, and then he got a call from Dinah Washington.
Wow.
They needed a piano player. That was it.
Oh, I didn't know he played with Dinah Washington.
Yeah.
My favorite singer.
Joe was a force of nature. A force of nature, very, very strong personality. When I met him, he was just like, talk to my agent. It's like, oh, but we got to be friends. He came to the station a lot of times, and I love him. So anyway, it was a very, very powerful group. All the different members that went through Weather Report, they all changed except for Wayne and Joe.
Right. The jazz fusion movement, was that something that was nascent at that time, that a lot of people were playing a similar style, or was this like something completely new?
The first Weather Report album, I think, was in 1971. I think 1971. Yeah, it was after In a Silent Way.
Right.
Yeah, that was Joe playing with Miles. But there were a few other groups. There were some funk groups. There was, Jeremy Steig, and there were a few other jazz fusion. And jazz fusion was either something that people liked, or the jazz aficionados hated it. And of course, the jazz is dead. There's even a series now called Jazz is Dead. I think coming from Blue Note. I don't know. But people thought jazz was dead because they weren't selling records. The British invasion, the electronica stuff, and electronic instruments. People thought jazz wasn't selling and was going to die. They were seriously wrong. They were wrong.
All right, so let's move on to some of the favorite albums. Okay, here's the ones you got on the turntable right now, right?
That's right. We'll start with Speak No Evil.
Right.
It was just, first of all, the group. Elvin Jones, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Freddie Hubbard, and then, of course, the music that he wrote.
Right. Where did you get this autographed copy?
I interviewed him.
Oh, you interviewed him at that time?
A few times, yeah. Well, no, I interviewed him in 1984 and 1995.
Okay, so that the other album that you've got there, Atlantis.
1995.
Okay, that's
a very different group.
Okay, now we can go on to some of the albums. This is one you selected. You selected the track "A La Mode."
Just his solo is perfect. It's like a chambered Nautilus. It's the way he thinks, the symmetry of the solo, the architectural side of the solo. It's just perfect. And as an improviser, myself, not a very good one, it's just a perfect solo. And it's succinct, it's concise, it's lapidary, like a fine cut gem. And so I had to include this one. It starts on a dime. It doesn't mess around, it just starts. It starts like a rocket sled, or what do they call it on a car where you make it go really fast, really quickly? Launch control. It starts like with launch control. So it's one of his, I think, great solos, and I wanted to include it.
Yeah, so we should this album. I don't think this album's been reissued. You know, Jim?
I'm pretty sure I have some kind of it may not have been reissued lately, but mine's a reissue. I'm sure it is. I can go get it.
Okay, is it audiophile pressing or
yeah, it's one of those audiophile pressings. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing this because I would have definitely bought it.
I just fell in love with Art Blakey when I was a kid. I saw a documentary on him, and I was a budding young drummer, and I just went nuts. So I've always loved him.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Now this is a great album.
The compositions are all Wayne.
Yeah.
And the musicians, you couldn't get a more all-star group than this. Everybody was just at the top of their game. Wayne writing the compositions, and there are a lot. Speak No Evil, Witch Hunt, Infant Eyes. I mean, these are like, in every fake book that musicians use. These are classics. And this album, I think, did quite well for Wayne. I think it sold well.
You mentioned that this was one of the few albums or maybe the only album you recorded with Elvin Jones.
And I think Ron Carter as well.
Oh, okay.
I mean, don't swear me to that, but I don't think Ron Carter and Elvin Jones played on other albums.
Oh,
Nope.
It's one of those $1 million deals come in.
Yeah, forget it.
So yeah, this is another classic album. This one I have also. I haven't seen this one on reissue as I recall, but have you seen this one on reissue, Jim?
I believe it's being reissued later in about a month or two. But
is that right? What label?
Yeah.
If any Blue Note record deserved a Tone Poet reissue,
Yeah.
I think.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure if it's Tone Poet or Classic, but I'm pretty sure it's coming out soon.
I think Tone Poet is just the packaging is better, but both of them are mastered by Kevin Gray.
They're doing such a good job, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like some of these records. It's like restoring, a Ferrari or a classic Porsche, or and they're being that careful, or cutting a diamond.
You've been to Capitol Records, haven't you, and sort of
Yes.
seen those tapes?
No, I've never.
I was there one time. A guy goes, "Look," and it was pretty much a lot of Blue Note master tapes.
Is that where Michael Kuskuna had to go to do the reissues that he did on disc?
I think so. It was just, I didn't even want to look too long. There were about 50 master tapes on a shelf.
Wow.
It reminds me in a weird way of Charlie Hayden. I asked him, why do you always play with your eyes closed? Well, he was playing, I don't know whether it was some famous club. It might have been Village Vanguard. It might have been at one of the other classic clubs. And he opened his eyes, and there are all these bass players in the audience. I think Wendell Marshall, maybe Ron Carter, and some of the older bass players. And he freaked out. He couldn't look out there because all these bass players were in the audience. So he had to. So anyway, so you're kind of like Charlie Hayden in the club.
Yeah, I don't want to see it.
Yeah. Kind of shut your eyes.
All right, so let's move on to the next album. This is a later Wayne Shorter album.
Yeah, this was like 19. It was in the early 90s. Much later. Very ambitious record. He had like 11 people in the rhythm section, in the main section, and then a 30-piece classical orchestra. So this was a showcase of his writing. This is a showcase of his talents as a composer for a large group. I think it was produced by Marcus Miller, the electric bass player.
Okay.
And it got one of the worst reviews in the New York Times that I've ever seen. It basically said that this album shows how Wayne Shorter was poisoned by Miles Davis.
In what sense? I don't get it.
Well, that it had some electronic stuff in there, some phase shifters or some sort of computer stuff, in addition to all the acoustic musicians in terms of the production. Um, and apparently, you're thinking of what Miles Davis was doing in On the Corner and all those records after he disbanded the quintet. And this reviewer, and I don't know whether it was Peter Watrous or one of the other jazz reviewers at the New York Times, but this person obviously liked the classic Miles Davis and didn't like all this kind of whatever the ingredients in this album. So it got an incredibly bad review, but then it won a Grammy, which is pretty cool, It was very, very advanced. It's an interesting record. It's a very complex record, but it really showcases his talents as a writer and arranger for a big group.
Yeah, I haven't heard this one. I have to check it out. I just recently saw a concert with Terrence Blanchard that reminded me of what you're saying, because he had the Turtle Island Quintet on stage with him playing classical stuff, and it was all electronically processed and all that. And maybe I'm too old, but I wasn't really that crazy about it. Plus, it was a terrible acoustic mix.
Yeah,
I don't know. Have you heard this album, Jim?
I have not heard this album. No, I'm gonna have to go dig it up. I just watched this documentary though, The Language of the Unknown. Have you seen that?
No.
It talks about.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just a documentary about a show that he did in Paris, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I watched that. That's the one where he's doing the Namyoho Rengekyo with the little bells at the beginning.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's interesting watching that documentary because you can see Wayne has a very kind of a halting way of speaking, where he's speaking, but then he's thinking about what he's going to say next or what he's going to connect it with. And it's kind of halting. It's not like somebody who talks fast, Mm-hmm. And he's kind of plays like that. There's space in between his notes. He's thinking about what he's going to do with the next phrase. And it's very different than what you would get with sort of the Michael Brecker school, where there are a lot of notes going, big influence on tenor players. Wayne was of a complete different genre.
It's almost as if he's so in the moment, he doesn't even need to play. I mean, those moments between notes are important too.
And that could have been, ironically, even though the writer for the New York Times reviewing the album said that he was poisoned by Miles Davis. Miles Davis always said it's a space between the notes. That's where the meaning is. And he said that. And Miles Davis, when he did blindfold tests, oh my God, he did one with Oscar Peterson. And I can't even repeat what he said. He said, why does he have to play so many notes? And if you listen to some of the Gil Evans records, oh my God, what Miles does, you can't argue with that kind of genius. Just amazing. But then Miles had to change all the time, and he did.
Yeah, it's kind of like the jazz Madonna, right?
Yeah.
I won't say that. That's too rough.
But Miles also, he needed to pay for his Ferraris and Lamborghinis, especially after he crashed them. He needed to make money. He needed to have a nice big contract and make money to support his lifestyle, to support his clothing, his jewelry, especially his cars. He had beautiful cars. He had a Ferrari very early on. But then remember, George Avakian signed him to Columbia right after seeing him in the 1955 what's the George Wein festival in New York. I'm drawing a blank. The summer festival in New York. Newport. Yeah, at Newport. Signed him the next day. That was in 1955. And he got a big fat contract. And so he made money. And Miles came from money too.
Yeah.
He came from money. His father was the only oral surgeon. Oral surgeon. Yeah, oral surgeon in East St. Louis, Illinois. Yeah. So anyway, I like this record. It's got a lot of electronic stuff that the purists don't like, and they never will like. But as a compositional vehicle, it's interesting, and that's why I listed it.
Yeah, he's really an incredible composer when you think about it.
And but Miles Davis, one of the reasons why he loved Wayne is that if Miles didn't want to have to write a new composition, Wayne would come up with them. And records like Water Babies, Nefertiti, and all these other albums, all the compositions were by Wayne Shorter. So Wayne contributed a lot to the quintet records, a lot.
There's that quote in the Language of the Unknown documentary where I think the bass player says, "I feel like I'm flying," and Wayne says, "When we were with Miles, we were flying all the time." Something like that.
Probably in more ways than one.
Well, you know.
Can I mention a record that I didn't actually list?
Absolutely.
Without getting thrown in jail.
No.
The Plug Nickel concerts from 1965. There are two versions. They're box sets. First one came out in Japan. The second one, the album first came out on CBS Sony in Japan. We had the album. We got it right away. Right away for the radio station. And then it came out as a box set. Then Columbia here released it, but they did it with all the ambient noise and the crowd noise and everything else. And I think with some of the interstitial dialogue with the musicians and everything else. And I like the Japanese, but long story short, Miles loved playing on Green Dolphin Street. He played it every night. And the version with the quintet on Green Dolphin Street from the Plug Nickel is one of the great solos of all time. All the solos, Miles' solo, but Wayne Shorter in particular, his solo is just amazing. And this is kind of, on Green Dolphin Street is a standard. It sort of tests how do you treat this well-trodden piece. And what Wayne did with it was complete genius.
Yeah, I wanted to mention for people, they should look up your Wayne Shorter playlist on Spotify. I was just listening to it in the car on the way over. It was fantastic. I thought it was great selection, and just put some tracks in there that I had not heard.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of music there. I'm proud of it, and my love for Wayne hopefully was evident.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention, if you need to contact us, you can see on the scroll below. Got my website, Jim's email address, and Tom's email address. So, of course, if you have any questions or any comments, send them on in, right?
Yep.
Keep it clean. Keep it clean, though.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
This has been fun.
We're gonna do something else another time. So we'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.